Good morning, folks, and thank you for coming to Jagmeet Singh's press conference. We will start with remarks and then we will go to questions. Bon matin tout le monde. On va commencer avec des remarques et ensuite passer aux questions. Monsieur Singh?
Thanks so much. We are a day after the first working day of the year, and within a couple hours of that first working day yesterday, the wealthiest CEOs in this country earned more than the average worker did in an entire year. This is a problem. It's particularly a problem given that we're dealing with a cost of living crisis and an inflation without precedent in recent history. And as people are having a hard time with everything, basic necessities, buying groceries, paying their bills, they're feeling squeezed, and the real salaries of workers has gone down. The wealthiest CEOs in this country have seen an increase in their wages by over 20%. They're making massive amounts of money, and it shows that in this time of inflation and this crisis of cost of living, that it's working out very well for those at the very top, and it's hurting workers, it's hurting families, it's hurting people. And neither the Liberals or the Conservatives are willing to point this out. What we are saying very clearly, and the evidence shows this, that corporate greed is causing the pain that people are feeling. It's one of the elements that's contributing to the pain that people are experiencing. Corporate greed is contributing to the cost of living going up, and we need to tackle it. While the Prime Minister says it's too simplistic to make CEOs pay what they owe, we disagree. We think the Prime Minister is wrong. It is the right thing to do to make CEOs pay what they owe. And if they're not paying what they owe, then people end up paying then the price ends up falling on the shoulders of people. Other countries around the world are taking action against corporate greed, and we need to do that here in Canada as well. And so I want Canadians to know that that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep on fighting for you and for your families. We're going to fight back against corporate greed, and we're going to fight back to make sure the burden of this current crisis doesn't fall on your shoulders. We're going to make sure those at the very top who can afford to are paying what they owe. Donc, hier, c'était la première journée du travail. Et dans quelques heures, les plus riches PDG de ces pays ont gagné plus de salaire, plus d'argent que le moyen salaire pour un travailleur pour une année. Ça, c'est un problème. C'est un problème parce que dans un temps d'inflation sans précédent, quand les travailleurs ont de la misère, ont de la difficulté à rejoindre les deux bouts, les ultra riches ont gagné plus d'argent. Et on a un premier ministre qui dit que c'est trop simple de faire payer le juste part des ultra riches. Non, c'est exactement ce qu'on doit faire. On n'est pas d'accord avec le premier ministre. On pense qu'on doit forcer les ultra riches de payer le juste part. Et on doit faire face à l'avarice ou la cupidité des grandes entreprises, des PDG, qui font des profits énormes sous les dos des travailleurs. Donc, on va continuer de se battre pour vous, pas comme les libéraux et les conservateurs qui ne font rien ou qui ne font rien, qui ne regardent pas l'avarice et la cupidité des grandes entreprises. On comprend que ça fait mal aux gens et c'est de plus en plus difficile pour acheter les épiceries, c'est difficile à payer les factures et on peut faire quelque chose pour régler ça. Et je veux vous assurer que je vais continuer de me battre pour vous et vos familles et on va s'assurer que la pression ne tombe pas sur les épaules des travailleurs, qu'on force les ultra riches de payer le juste part pour aider les familles. Merci. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
So we will go to questions. Reminder to use the raised hand function. We will take one question and one follow-up. On va passer aux questions. S'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction lever la main. On va faire une question et un suivi. First question, we have Mackenzie Gray from Global News.
Hello, Mr. Singh. Happy New Year. I have some COVID questions for you. I asked you last week about the Canadian government potentially bringing in testing requirements for people coming from China. Your answer was that we should listen to the experts and take their approach. We've heard from the experts now that the government's brought this in, saying that it's basically useless and we shouldn't do it. So now that they brought it in, what do you think? Was this the right thing to do?
This is one of the things that we've been finding in general with the approach of this government is they've not been doing the best job of being transparent with what the evidence is and what the recommendations are from the experts and the decisions being taken. And the reason why that is so important is that when we don't have transparency and we don't have the public health experts providing us with the reasons, or providing the government providing that rationale of the experts, providing that reasoning, then people start to lose trust. And so I would encourage the Prime Minister and the government to ensure that every decision we're making is backed up by the evidence and the advice of experts. And when it's not, we need to be very clear that then it's not the best evidence we're receiving, or it's not the guidance from public health experts that we're receiving. And this is an ongoing critique I have of the government, that when we don't have that evidence-based decision-making, or the experts' reasoning that's being presented by the government, then the government starts to erode the public trust in the decisions being made, and that's a problem.
In the US, in a number of American cities, Philly, Boston, some places in New Jersey, and school districts there, they're bringing back masking. That's not something we're seeing in Canada. That doesn't seem like there's many school districts interested in doing that. Do you think that's something we should be doing in schools at this point in time?
Again, with any healthcare protocol, in this case, the mask protocol, or putting in place more masking, this is something that we, well, again, would defer to the expert advice. My understanding of the advice is that masking does help. It does help reduce the spread of infection, and we're seeing a time period of serious respiratory illness increase, and the rate of infection increasing, and the rate of people getting sick increasing, and masking has been effective in the past. So the evidence seems to be there, but again, I would defer to the public health advice, and then we should be following that advice and doing the best we can to keep people safe and healthy.
Next question will be Jeff Levine from iPolitics.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. Happy New Year and happy belated birthday.
And thank you very much.
I wanted to get your thoughts on the news that Twitter plans to lift political advertising. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on, like, what do you think this might mean for Canada's election, especially all this conversation we're having about foreign interference?
Sorry, lifting the
political advertising.
Lifting it as
lifting the ban on political advertising.
Right,
pardon me.
Right. So in general, what we're seeing with Twitter, the approach of Elon Musk as the owner and CEO has been pretty disastrous overall. I think his approach has been one where he has made a lot of decisions, backtracked on them, put out a lot of comments, then withdrawn them, been very unclear about his direction. And we're seeing a really troubling rise in hateful messages on Twitter. That's something that's really kind of my major concern. In terms of the way they approach political campaigning, I think there could be ways to provide access in a way that would be helpful if there's clear notice or clear advisories that this is a paid campaign, or this is a paid message, the way we see in regular ads on TV. But I'm concerned about any sort of protocol being put in place by Elon Musk, given his track record, given how unclear and how horribly he's actually been managing Twitter. I think that any move forward with him in leadership has been scrutinized, and fairly so, because of the really unclear and bad manner in which he's been running the platform.
And just a little bit more on that, are you concerned at all then that this could open our elections up to foreign interference? The
concern about foreign interference, I have to say, has been a legitimate concern, and more evidence has shown that there's a number of layers of foreign interference that have happened, or that have actions have taken place that are deeply troubling, and we need to take that very seriously. Given kind of the approach of the current state, given the current state of Twitter, I think that has become even more of a risk. Certainly, given that the approach that Elon Musk has taken has meant that a lot of workers have left, a lot of people that managed Twitter and managed or tried to manage some of the misinformation or the troublesome posts that have been clearly identified as hateful or as misinformation, that the work that was done in the past to limit that work is no longer being done. So I think for that reason alone, the risk of that platform being used for foreign interference certainly goes up. And with the current approach or with the proposal of lifting the ban on political ads, I think that also increases. All of this really highlights how the government has a responsibility to play in making sure social media platforms are adhering to proper guidelines around misinformation, around hate, and why we've been saying for a long time, the responsibility to keep people safe from misinformation and radicalization can rest in the hands of private companies, has to be the government taking responsibility. And for a long time, we've said that the Liberal government hasn't done the job of making sure platforms are following the rules around making sure hate and misinformation aren't being spread. And so that again puts the responsibility back on the government to do what it should be doing. And we're going to continue to put pressure on the government to do this, properly prevent hate and misinformation from being spread on social media platforms.
Next question, Fraser Needham from APTN.
Hi, good morning and Happy New Year. And I guess I didn't know it was your birthday, so happy belated birthday. So I guess I wanted to ask you about the recent shooting death of the OPP officer last week, and also there's been some calls by the head of the OPP and the Conservatives for changes to the bail system to prevent, I guess, what they feel situations like this happening, because this person was under some weapons offenses, I guess, and had not complied, showing up at court and whatnot. But so what's your thoughts on that? Do you think there does need to be changes to the bail system?
First, I just want to express my deepest condolences to the family and to the loved ones of the fallen OPP officer. It's horrific to lose an officer in the line of duty, and for the family, the community, I know people are still reeling from the loss. When it comes to bail laws, we need to make sure that the laws are balancing the important principles of respecting people's presumption of innocence. Of course, that's a fundamental character of a democracy and of a well-functioning justice system. That's something that encourages folks to have the opportunity to present a defense, and we want to continue to protect that principle. We also need to make sure that we're balancing that with the real risk to society that is posed by certain and particular individuals, and that's an ongoing challenge to make sure it's done in the right way, and that's something that I think constantly needs to be looked at.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask in a different way. Do you think, though, the Conservatives' response and perhaps the OPP or the person that's ahead of it is a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction in terms of bail, because this person's Indigenous, and it's well known that Indigenous people are often actually denied bail and don't get the same access to rehabilitation, and that a lot of people just feel, having more people in jail it's not working in our country. Do you think they sort of I guess maybe been a bit politicized the issue perhaps, rather than really looking at the broader issue of our bail system and what is best for rehabilitation?
I would always I should say this more carefully. It is common that the Conservatives would politicize issues around concerns around criminal justice. It seems to be something that Conservatives often do. It is a very serious matter and should be taken seriously, and it shouldn't be something that's politicized. It should be about what we're doing to keep people safe and to keep our community safe, and not responding in a way that is overly charged with trying to win political points, but making a decision that is in the best interest of society. And as you've mentioned, you're absolutely right. Indigenous communities are disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system, are disproportionately incarcerated, and it's clearly a result or an outcome of injustice in the system that the justice system doesn't acknowledge and recognize. That is something that needs to be fixed, and is something that governments have to take better steps to address, because it is a problem when racialized people, Indigenous people are overrepresented in our criminal justice system. That's clearly a problem that needs to be fixed. So we need to look at what we can do to keep people safe in society and look to other examples around the world of approaches that work to keep communities safe. Community safety is paramount, but it can't be that we take a simplistic solution to deal with something that's complex. And I think that often the Conservatives are going to point to a simplistic solution that's actually not going to keep communities any safer. We are focused on the outcome of making sure we've got the best, safest solution, or the best solutions to create the safest communities. And we should be constantly looking at that as the lens.
Next question, Cormac McSweeney from City News.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. I will continue the wishes of a Happy New Year and happy birthday.
Thank you.
Liberal MP and chair of the Transport Committee, Peter Schiffke, has announced that they'll be holding hearings to address the travel chaos that happened over the holidays with Via Rail and Sunwing. I'm just wondering, what's your reaction? What do you want to see out of that committee hearing? But also, do you think that the Air Passenger Bill of Rights needs to be strengthened in some way to better protect passengers when they're stuck in situations like this?
I'll start with the second part of the question. Yes, it's clear that the Passenger Bill of Rights is not strong enough, that the government didn't do the work necessary to make sure there's enough teeth or enough repercussions or strength in that bill so that passengers actually get protection. It's clear that that's not been the case, and we're seeing the outcome of that a lot of people are stranded. So that's a big problem. With the committee, yeah, I think the committee can do some important work, but that doesn't eschew the Minister of Transportation from his responsibility, or the government from their responsibility. The committee does important work, and that's an opportunity for oversight or for accountability, to bring forward witnesses, to hear from those companies involved, and to hear from the decision makers around why this happened, how it can be prevented. But the Minister of Transport and the Liberal government have the power to actually make decisions right now, to do things right now to protect workers, or to protect, passengers, and they aren't doing the work necessary. It could be strengthening the Bill of Rights. That could also be a lot of these companies, the airline companies in particular, receive lots of public money, and they should be held to account for the treatment of passengers, given the fact they receive so much public money. So there's a lot that the government can do, and what passengers went through, whether it's Sunwing, whether it's Via, whether it's just passengers in general over the holiday season, there was a lot of difficulty that people went through, and there's not enough protections in place for those passengers, and that has to change.
And just as a follow-up, then, we do have this Air Passenger Bill of Rights. Do you think we need to strengthen protections as well for people traveling in other modes of federal transportation, such as rail transportation, especially when we're looking at a time when we could be expanding rail transportation in Canada?
Yes, I think that's very reasonable. I think Canadians should expect to have protections, have rights when they travel in our country, whether it's by plane or train. And I think that's a very reasonable consideration and something I would absolutely support. And I think that the natural extension of a Bill of Rights for air passengers would be to extend that to other modes of transportation, and certainly something we should be doing.
Next question, Mickey Jurek from the Canadian Press.
Hey, yeah, it's kind of just a follow-up question to what you were just asked. But so do you think that the CEO of Sunwing and Via Rail should be at committee? And do you think that should be extended maybe to Air Canada? As you mentioned, there was a bailout and they have canceled some of their routes across Canada as well.
Certainly, the committee should be able to hear from those representatives of the airlines and of the train service. That's something that the committee should do, absolutely. But I again want to reiterate that the committee can do its work and should do its work, and I think that's a good step. But that doesn't remove the responsibility of the Liberal government in general to take steps beyond just a committee and oversight and accountability. But the Minister of Transportation and the Liberal government have a job and have a role to ensuring that passengers are safe, and have significant powers to actually make that happen. and they should be taking steps to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future, and they should be taking steps to find out why it did happen.
Thanks. And then how do you see this be resolved then? And do you think that Transport Canada needs to maybe loosen the rules so that maybe more airlines can operate domestically in Canada if our current airlines can't meet the task?
Many people have raised for a long time the fact that there's not enough competition and there aren't enough airlines. And I know this is something that plays out for people in the north, particularly, who saw reduced competition, see their prices for travel increase dramatically. So more domestic options for travel is absolutely something I would support, and finding ways that we can make it easier for domestic competition is something, again, New Democrats would support. We need to make sure that people have access to being able to get around the country, and that it is affordable. And right now, for many people, it is not at all. And it's something that we need to look at and find solutions for.
Sorry about that. Next question is Palak Mangat.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Thanks for taking our questions. You referenced the Prime Minister suggested, I think it was last week, that one of your ideas was simplistic. Given that so far, I do take your point that you are pushing back against that, but given that there is no buy-in there, how do you plan to pressure the government on this specific measure? And, I'm not sure if you can be adding things into the deal, but have you sat down with the Liberals over the holidays, or will you be sort of in the weeks before the House does resume to sort of renew the CASA?
Thanks for the question. So we made it really clear when we forced the government to do certain things, and we had that written in the document. That agreement is something that we said very clearly is a floor, not a ceiling. So it doesn't limit the number of things we can ask for. We can ask for and we can push for things beyond the agreement, and we have. We forced the government to double the GST rebate, for example. That was not in the agreement. That was an idea that we put forward back in May. We continue to fight hard. We pushed for it, and eventually in November, Canadians received that rebate. Nearly over 10 million Canadians received additional supports financially. So that's an example of something that we fought for, that we pushed the government to do, that was outside the agreement. And we're going to continue to do things like that. When it comes to making CEOs pay what they owe, we absolutely believe it's the right thing to do. And we've got evidence from other countries that they can do it. They've done it. We pointed to the massive wealth being generated by oil and gas companies, that they're seeing huge profits, and countries around the world have said they need to pay what they owe then. If they're making these huge profits, there should be an excess profit tax. And that's what the UK has done. That's what Germany has done. Spain has done. The European Union as well, as an entire European Union, has also taken those steps. So we can do it here in Canada. We're going to continue to push for it. We're going to use the example, and I want Canadians to know this. If those at the very top who are making massive profits, who are making record profits, and making profits off the back of inflation, which is really profiteering off of people's pain. If these companies are making these huge profits and don't pay what they owe, then the burden's going to end up falling back on working people. If the wealthy CEOs aren't paying what they owe, then people end up having to pay the price of that. And that's a problem. So we're going to use that example. We're going to continue to push back and continue to fight. In terms of meetings, we have in our agreement a requirement for the government to be meeting regularly in different ways. And I'll be meeting with the Prime Minister as a part of the agreement, and I'll be laying out some of those concerns. I had a meeting late last year, and I laid out my concerns around healthcare, around this, making sure that the super rich are paying what they owe, that given the excess profits being made, that those CEOs should be paying what they owe, and laying out what I expect in terms of more supports for people with the cost of living going up and the food prices continuing to rise. And so I laid those out before the end of the year, and we'll be continuing to lay out what we think that the government should be doing to help people out, to support people in this time in the new year as well.
Thanks. And sorry, just as a follow-up, are you sort of hopeful that the Liberals will warm up to this idea? What are the talks around that? Like, I'm just curious why you think there's reluctance on this measure as opposed to as opposed to the government bringing in more measures to, demand accountability from the oil and gas sector, for example. I'm just, for you, what is sort of the difference there?
Well, I think that this government just doesn't have the same priorities as we. They think it's okay for the burden to fall on workers. They think it's okay for the burden to fall on people. And we think they're wrong. We think that the prime minister is wrong not to make CEOs pay what they owe. And we've seen now a real stark example of what's happening. The fact that CEO pay, and we're talking about CEOs that are making in the millions and millions of dollars in compensation. Their average salary for CEOs has gone up by over 20% this year, while the real wages of workers went down by 2%. So there's a real difference here, where workers are seeing a pay cut in their real wages, in their real impact because of the cost of living making things more expensive. The real impact of their salary has gone down. The ability to purchase has gone down. And those at the very top, CEOs is a great representative of those at the very top, are making significantly more. And so that is a problem that needs to be addressed, because people see that as unfair, that they're paying the price, they're feeling the burden, they're feeling the squeeze, but those at the top are actually making even more profits. And we see that with corporate grocery stores, who are also experiencing massive profits. This end of year has shown that the large corporate grocers have seen big profits like Loblaws, and workers and people are struggling to buy groceries. So that's a problem, and the government has to respond to that. And so the reason so far that the government hasn't is because they don't think it's a problem. We think it is a problem, and we're going to continue to put pressure. Some of our success, I should point out, we have been able to secure some increases in terms of the amount that those at the very top pay. We were able to secure, as a part of our agreement, that banks and insurance companies had to pay a one-time excess profit tax, as well as an ongoing increase, permanent increase in tax. So that's something that we were able to obtain. So that shows some progress that we were able to make, but we're going to keep on fighting to see more.
Next question, Catherine Tunney from CBC.
Hello there. Happy New Year. And as a fellow January 2nd birthday, happy belated to you. I wanted to circle back to travel. You mentioned that the passenger Bill of Rights needs more teeth. Can you kind of give me some examples of what you would like to see added to those regulations?
I think on a broad stroke, the problem is that there is not enough of a repercussion for passengers that see their flights canceled, that don't get to, that they don't have, there's not enough of a remedy for airlines to not just say, you know what, we're just going to cancel the flight and whatever happens, happens. That's a problem. There has to be a significant ramification so that airlines don't do it. And passengers need to be made whole. We heard from lots of people that had stories that they were stranded and weren't able to get from the airlines, weren't able to get hotel costs because they were stuck with transfers. But companies were saying it wasn't their fault because of the inclement weather. But at the end of the day, we've got passengers that are just left high and dry and don't have a place to stay and can't get to their final destination. So there's a lot of concern around what will it take to make sure a passenger is either made fully whole if they're facing a cancellation or a delay, or what we can do to lessen the impact of what they go through. So I think those are the two pieces that generally speaking that need to be strengthened. And the specific thing is there needs to be enough of the Bill of Rights has to provide enough protection that it really changes the way airlines are operating, so that people aren't faced with what they saw with Sunwing and some of the really troubling stories that we saw over the holiday period in terms of travel. So those are the things that I want to see happen in terms of how we strengthen the bill to protect workers. And this is something that the government has known for a long time. And when they put the Bill of Rights forward for passengers, these are problems that were raised and they have not fixed it.
Just as a follow, I guess, have you or will you, have conversations with the government about making legislative changes to that bill?
Yes, we will. We have raised this concern. Our transport critic has raised this concern on behalf of our party, and has said, Taylor Backrack is our transport critic, has said that this is this Bill of Rights doesn't go far enough, doesn't protect workers, doesn't protect, passengers enough, and has raised that concern. And I will certainly continue to raise the concern. And it's pretty cool that we are birthday twins, if I just might add.
Yeah, happy belated, Catherine. I think that wraps up the questions. Jagmeet, if you want to go to closing remarks.
Certainly. Thanks again for your attendance. And I just want, again, to reiterate how much we find it unfair and frustrating that Canadians are experiencing a pay cut right now. They are feeling the squeeze. It's hard to go to a grocery store and not be able to buy what your family needs. It is a major worry for people who are seeing interest rates go up and their mortgage payments go up, and they're wondering how they're going to keep their homes. In this time, when people are sacrificing so much, are feeling the pain, to see CEOs earn what a worker earns in just a couple hours, and to see these CEOs make so much more, a massive increase in their pay while workers are seeing a pay cut, is wrong. And that's why we're going to continue to fight to make sure workers and people and families are protected, are supported, and we make those the top pay what they owe, so that we can make sure that workers and families get the help that they need. And I want you to know I'm going to continue to fight for you. Thanks so much. Merci beaucoup. And talk again soon.